Welcome to The People's View, a program dedicated to discussing local, state, and national issues and their effect on the American people. The People's View provides a platform for state representatives and national figures to present their viewpoint. Whether it's social, economic, or financial topics, you'll hear it on The People's View.
Hello, this is Carl Seidel, your representative from Nashua. This is a People's View. People's View is sponsored by the Nashua City Republican Club. And today's guest is Paul Ingbretson, chair of the Grievance Committee. Paul, can you talk to us about the Grievance Committee and what it does and why it's in existence?
Well, I think probably a good first question is why it's here. And just a number of years ago, 3 or maybe plus years ago, a number of people just started coming out of the woodwork with serious cries, coming from the Division of Children, Youth, and Families, and particularly there in the family courts. And in the family courts, they were protesting remarkable failures of due process, just things we take for granted, not being given due process.
So people weren't getting the service that they expected from the agencies of the state.
Yeah, and feeling like they were being ill-treated, obviously. And redress of grievances, and the person who really discovered it, the credit needs to be given to probably the best researcher we have in the House on the Constitution, which is Representative Dan Itza. But he was looking at, in his long research on the subject of the Constitution, noticed and brought to our attention how striking the redress of grievance articles are, 31 and 32, and one of them tells us, the people, they have the right to get redress from us, and the other one tells us to give it to them. However that works. So
this was a problem way back from the start.
Yeah, and one of the big conflicts you get into with the AG's office and stuff, or the courts, is who do you think you are? This is the court's business.
Right.
And yet we had courts in those days, of course we did, but we still had redress, so it obviously wasn't just the court's business. And of course we're specifically tied, the redress of grievance is specifically tied to when the state and state agencies, individuals or officials working for us, do wrong and cause injury and that sort of thing, which of course happens. You know, I mean, it would happen in a business, it would happen in any other situation, of course it happens.
And the agency has no way of addressing these grievances?
Well, agencies have ombudsmen and things like that. Typically the ombudsman is paid by the agency. You have a significant conflict there. At one point, in one of our grievances this week, I called the ombudsman from HHS and I said, come on over and talk to us about some of the things we're saying. He said, no way.
No
I mean, he took a position that was kind of remarkable. And of course the AG has enabled that, as you know, with the Telegraph article and other things that you've seen, that the agency is actually telling them to push back and to not come talk to us, which is really quite remarkable considering that we are a state and a nation,
right,
governed by the people.
And the people aren't getting heard properly. I mean, yeah, there's courts, but the higher up the courts go, the more expensive it is for the people.
Yeah, a number of these are definitely coming out of situations where people are out of money. And there appears to be no other justice to be had, and this should be available anyway, just constitutionally. But when you're out of funds, what else is there? And don't you have a recourse if you've been injured by an agency of the state?
Well, I remember a couple of years ago when you started your group, most of them came from involving the divorced couples in child custody and things of that nature. But now I understand it's expanded beyond that to different areas.
Sure. One of the areas, of course, that we're reporting on this week, if you look at the calendar, is the Attorney General's office aggressively pursuing with the banking department a gentleman who didn't do anything. I mean, actually, and they were informed over and over again that what they're accusing him of didn't apply to him, and even if it had, would have been retroactively applied because it wasn't a law when he did it. So, and we're of course going to make you'll see a very positive decision on that on behalf of the House, of the committee at least, as a report to the House, which is what we do. And so, but others have to do with seriously wrong assessments, just curiosities in assessment, and
wrong processes by different groups in the towns.
Yeah, different things in the town. In one case, everybody probably knows already about the town of Rochester that had 300 citizens petition us because for 9 years a comprehensive zoning board or
Ignored them.
committee didn't keep minutes
Oh,
for 9 complete years, and so then they come up with a 200-page document where they must have made decisions, and nothing to be had. So when they come forward to the people, they're pretty upset, and ought they not be?
Yeah, yeah.
And we require them to, and all the way back to them.
And
we require
there's
them.
no real other route for them to get satisfaction.
Well, there is. They could go to the courts, and they did successfully previously in something somewhat like that. You know, they succeeded in going to the courts, but you have that same question again. These are public officials. Why should somebody have to pay $50,000
Right.
when these guys are patently doing something wrong? And is there another
And they
avenue?
have the state money behind them.
Yeah. Well, they have. Yeah. I mean, taxpayer money.
Yeah. They have the courts. The Attorney General has to defend them if they go to court. Right?
Yeah. Yes, well, and that gets to the question of who is the Attorney General, what is their job, and a lot of people out here in citizenry believe the Attorney General is there to protect them. And the point I made in our conference, in our press conference a week ago, replying to what they said in their 6-page or 5-page letter that some people heard about, which I would call their notorious letter, you know, because it really is a reach in so many areas, but they are taking the position that they take care of the people, and then when the people are saying your agencies are hurting us, they protect the agencies. They're counsel for the agencies. And so we find that's a kind of a serious issue, which does suggest why redress exists, at least vis-a-vis the AG's office.
What do you do once you find that all you do now is you have a finding for or against, or not a finding, I guess is that.
No,
that's your
found is the
decision.
right word. Finding.
Finding.
Yeah.
And where does it go from there?
Well, all of our committees just make, in a sense, findings. You know, you bring a bill in, the committee decide, they find that it ought to pass, and they pass it to the House, and the House makes a decision on it. Ours is a little more indirect in that what we do is we decide whether the complaint is founded or not, by looking at documents and having the other side speak and all that sort of thing. And we come to a conclusion about whether or not it is in fact founded, and then we can make recommendations, and they could be in the form of a recommendation that somebody ought to be impeached, or that some legislation, some law needs to be corrected because it's a deficiency that we caused. And, and it can go in a number of directions, but we're talking legislative solutions.
And do you do that as your committee, or do you hand it off to another committee?
We actually only make the report. However, when my committee has heard this, some of them are getting very excited and want to bring bills in. They're hunting for the bill, and they're working with people to see if find the right bill. And we definitely are making recommendations. Again, I'd recommend highly that people look at the calendar that's coming out this week, the House calendar, and see our report and see what our recommendations are. They're not. We recommend Bill X, and there's all the bills laid out, but the concepts are there.
That's what you're looking at, the process that's being abused.
The process or the personality, yeah. The process being abused, obviously, and the personality doing it. So it becomes a question of whether or not a committee, in that case, we're trying to figure out what our question is. We're asking for a report from the AG and the banking department, or from an audit of some sort, to say why these things are happening, because this wasn't responsible behavior to our minds. You know, that they were chasing this guy down they were many times told, "You guys are out of line. They aren't under this law."
Well, when you go to some of these committees, and you haven't been getting them to come in to give their side of the story, as I understand it.
Yes.
And that's why you looked at the possibility of subpoenas.
Yes. Yeah. One of the more amusing, and that's why I say we use the word, I think, bizarre in the article. The things the AG is doing, you tell him not to come in, and then he complains because it's a one-sided report.
Right.
We didn't hear the other side. It's not even funny, and it's not right in relation to the people. Now, the part about confidentiality, that's a real issue.
That was the next question.
But yeah, right. Of course, it would be. We certainly have a right to hear these people who are being complained about explain. I don't see any reason why we have to know the details, even of a child's name. We know what case it is. Nothing about confidentiality should be able to have to come out. They should be able to say that under rule such and such, they can do this in cases like this or cases like that. And our question to them would be, does that sort of thing apply in this case? And the answer to them from them could be yes or no. You know what I mean?
So you've never seen what their side is in defending their action. They don't.
Well, not in the case of the agency or the family division of the courts.
Right.
But yes, on the part of the Attorney General's office, they've definitely come forward and spoken on behalf of their office, explaining what they did. The Labor Department came forward on a labor issue and explained what they did. The town came forward in Rochester and explained. It was great. We had a full hearing. We knew exactly what the answer ought to be. It was great. And it was good for the people. You know, now here we are with what? When they won't come in, these are the two issues. And then they want to tell us, just push back and say, no, this is untouchable territory. Well, if the people are being injured by the state, this shouldn't be untouchable by the House. That's us. We're the people. We own this place, so to speak. Not you and me, but the people out there.
We're the responsible last choice for some of these people.
Yeah, we govern. The governor doesn't govern. The courts don't govern.
Right.
It's actually the legislature that
Well, are there just particular agencies that you're having more problems with, or?
Well, yeah, the two largest group of bills. Well, there's three areas. The AG's office is of four. If there's four, the AG's office is two or three maybe about related to them more particularly. But the biggest one is the division of, the family division of the courts.
Mm-hmm.
The divorce-related issues. So people are saying things like, well, you know, it's all personal, it's all nasty stuff, and there's all the emotional side. Well, there's repeated, over multiple years, failures of basic due process, which is a federal constitutional guarantee. Never mind an obvious obligation for justice in any situation. It's just the nature of justice. You wouldn't do that to somebody. No. And they're exacerbating cases enormously. So we had, like, I don't know, I think it might have been 9 or more people come forward, and just in the case of one marital master, for which reason we were looking to bill of address or impeach him, as you knew. And we even passed a bill in the House to investigate that impeachment. And now we have 9 more. Only, I guess, 2 of which are related to Cross, and the rest are related to others, but very similar things. And of course, we're looking for patterns.
Yeah.
But that wasn't the question you were asking. Then the next one is DCYF. DCYF, we have 5 or 6. And the DCYF complaints are similarly unusual, you know, in the sense that we see that it appears, I should say, it's being reported that the agency didn't go to relatives first, that they actually adopted kids out before going to relatives and give them an opportunity, which is not in our law. It's not. So we'd be wanting to show why they did that, and we believe they can do it without any confidentiality issues. And of course, we write those confidentiality things. I would believe we can make an adjustment, and they want to recommend an adjustment so the confidentiality can be waived if the family would waive it, or something like that. They could waive it at least to that extent and let those people defend themselves who are being, as it were, accused or at least involved in these issues. The third one, those are the GALs. The GAL board is one of the more remarkable things. They're acting in the most remarkable ways. And they really, lately, the guardian ad litems, they're all attorneys.
These are the people who are supposed to be representing the child.
The interest of the child, yeah. And it's amazing how many different breaches they're talking to us about. Just fundamental breaches of conflict of interest breaches.
Really?
Oh yeah, I could just run the course. And now we're finding out that there's this big push to give them immunity from any kind of punishment.
Immunity?
Yeah, that was in the news just last week.
That's a solution.
So, but they are a significant piece of the problem, and that's all tied. Those 3 generally are sort of a mass. They're in it together, in and out of each other's areas, you know.
So this is your first full year as a committee. You weren't a committee before.
First full term.
Full term, yes, as a committee. Are you getting into other things too? Do you see this growing, or do you see it some way of maybe correcting some of these misuses?
Yeah, I think you're asking a great question. I love your questions, by the way. You do this good.
Thank you.
We do. I mean, one of the things we're doing is we're collating data and finding out if there are patterns and that sort of thing. I shouldn't have said that. Would you get me back to your question again?
Do you see this expanding into other areas?
Yeah.
Or do you see this maybe actually correcting some of this poor activity?
What we've already seen, in one case where the really bad tax assessment happened, there was a member of the select board who said there was a discussion of this going to redress, and they were on the hot foot to get it fixed. They did not want to be here. So at the very least, that's a good thing. And we don't really want to be hearing this stuff. We want people who do it right. You know, a lot of this are in the area of mistakes.
Yeah.
And then they don't fix it. You know, maybe a cover-up or something. Why would we want that? So it's really great that that effect is showing up in 2 or 3 places. There was a court hearing where 2 or 3 members of the redress committee showed up, And we were told by people sitting in the room that the judge's behavior changed dramatically in that instance. So, the effect is interesting, and why shouldn't it be? Because the people do rule here. It's not the courts, and it's not.
Yeah, so you are being effective, even subtly, behind the scenes, or whatever you want to say. Yeah. And maybe more publicity will help.
Yeah, well, the reason I started talking about data collecting is because we do see a need for oversight. There is definitely a need for more oversight. We do have audits, performance audits and things like that, and a lot of people do get to come in and speak, and that's a very key benefit in those audits. But there's a lot of people out here who are not getting into these audits. They're not being heard from, and what we're doing effectively is oversight, piecemeal oversight.
Are you getting into these different agency audits? Because I've heard some of these hearings. Right. And in my mind, the agencies are just ignoring the audits. They say they don't have time or they don't have the personnel to do anything about it.
I know, and so much of this is pointed back at our frugality here in the state. Yeah. What kind of excuse is that for actually wrong behavior, or not taking care of business when you are doing wrong behavior? But one of the things I wanted to congratulate the speaker for was when the GAL report came out, and had quite a number of serious problems. He wrote a letter very quickly to the board, and he said, "What are you doing to fix this?" And he said, "I expect a reply." But of course, Representative O'Brien, the Speaker O'Brien, he created this committee. It's the power of the Speaker to do it. He'd sat in with us several years ago when we couldn't get the other party to actually create this committee, and a party, by the way, that pretended, I was getting the party stuff, but who actually claimed to be the People's Party. It surprises us, me particularly, the degree to which they oppose the idea of letting the people then say how the government itself might be little people.
Well, I think they've ingrained a little bit. These people, a lot of people here have been here for a while in the different agencies, and they're used to doing it a certain way, and they're not used to people questioning their methods.
Right. And we expect that from the agencies, but representatives representing the people and knowing that they're servants of the people too, and the people really are the ruling authority.
That's right.
Even just by the power they have to throw them out of office. And why wouldn't they be looking, especially to protect little guys who are out of funds? And one of the patterns we've seen is that it appears that people who don't have money are getting the worst end of the abuse. If you have money, I was in a court hearing and asked a guy involved in one of these issues, one of the redress issues. I turned to the lawyer on the other side where all the money was, and I said, "Do you think it's right that the side with the most money wins?" He says, "What's wrong with that?"
That's an attitude. So, it is.
And you can just run people out of money on one side.
That's true.
And we're hearing case after case after case. And of course, you can talk about the need for tort reform as an enormous problem, but we're starting to see, close and personal.
Well, I see a little bit. I'm on the Rules and Regulations Commission, and there are a lot of people that have problems there because they were getting fined for things that they claim were wrong, and and they didn't. The different committee agencies didn't have a method for them to really appeal that was meaningful.
Right. Yes. And that I think is because of the nature of going through themselves who did the work. How do you, it's the whatever guarding the hen house. I mean, it just doesn't work that way.
That's right. And I think about you see the good companies out there are the ones that have like what I call quality control. They check with the customer. Were you serviced fine? Were you satisfied? And
well, in theory, the ombudsman would do that for us, but I don't. We see clear evidence it's not working. In fact, even I'll say this that the head of the HHS, who I spoke to personally, said when somebody comes and makes a complaint to us, we look into it. So I sent someone over who made a complaint to us, one of our petitioners, and I said he said he would look into it. It's been now 3 months. He hasn't even sent her a letter in response to say that he received her letter and he's going to look into it or not. So what are we seeing? And I don't think he's a bad guy. I don't know what's happened. I don't know. Maybe he passed the letter off and said respond to this, and they did. Who knows? I don't know.
Nobody
you can't judge it.
A lot of people.
But why? That's a theoretical. That's why I say that you have ombudsman, you have the agency. If you have a good official who will do that, and I believe this guy probably does it at times. I'm not going to say he doesn't. Yeah. But this is a test case for me, and here it's months later and not a response. And I'm getting CC'd by that person. Yeah. I know when the letter went in. I know when and now she's writing back to me and saying not a word yet. So how much can you get out of them? But elected officials in a redress capacity with a requirement to listen to the grievance and then figure out how to fix it, which is what redress means. How is that different? That's a lot different. That's really oppositional, which is what you want in checks and balances.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. One favorable thing that I've seen lately, Supreme Court new call center and stuff.
Yeah.
One of the things they've learned from that call center is that now they have a core of people that are responding to certain types of questions.
Right.
And they claim they now are more aware of systematic problems
That's great.
in treating some of these things, because now it's focused just a few people. It just doesn't get disseminated to a whole bunch of different courts.
Yeah, and we believe that a bunch of this stuff has to be not like, for example, the division, family division. It has to be at the level of management.
Right.
It just seems like it has to be, and maybe these guys aren't good managers, or don't know how to get their heads around management, or just don't have the personnel or something.
They may not have participated in any kind of similar what I call quality control.
Yeah.
That industry is finding out. I mean,
Right,
we've
right.
done this. I've been in the industry over 45 years, and they want to know what their customers feel.
They must.
about their
They must
service.
know.
That's the only way you succeed, if you
Right.
serve your
Right.
customer.
But if they had immunity, what would they? If you as a businessman,
Oh, yeah.
were going to make the money, if you had a monopoly, what would you care?
Well, there's some of the companies are like that.
Yeah.
I mean, they
Yeah,
say the heck with
yeah.
you complain. Yeah, I got more lawyers than you have.
But it's really nice that companies like yours, because most companies are more like what you're talking about.
Yeah.
I really like, from when I was a kid to now, it was a sea change.
Yes,
And if
it
we could
is.
get this into the legislature, into
That's
the
right.
state government, it would be a wonderful thing for, we believe this about redress, that if we do this redress and listen good, it's going to go away. The need for it's going to go away. I think,
Good.
and
I think
act
so,
properly.
too.
If we act properly
A
as a
little
house,
daylight.
that's all it is.
Okay.
Jefferson, I'll give you a last quote here. Jefferson said, ultimately he believed the only way to control the public officials and public government is public opinion.
That's right.
That's
Very
what we're
good.
getting.
Paul, thank you very much.
Pleasure's
I
mine.
really
Thank
appreciate
you very
that.
much for having
This is
us.
Carl Seidel signing off for People's View. Please look at our website at NashuaGOP.com, .org, excuse me, NashuaGOP.org, and you'll see our upcoming events and other films from the public access channel, so you can pick those out of the archive to look at previous interviews. Thank you very much for tuning in.